Hi, my name is Jessica Tice, and this is my Capstone Research Project for EDU 626, Spring 2017. What is action research? In schools, action research refers to a wide variety of evaluative, investigative, and analytical research methods designed to diagnose problems or weaknesses, whether they be organizational, academic, or instructional, and then help educators develop practical solutions to address these quickly and efficiently. This is according to educationreform.org. Action research question that I have posed is, what is the impact of WIDA access training on elementary teacher lesson planning and teacher attitudes? So why is this important? According to the NEA, English language learners are among the fastest growing group of students in American schools. According to the school that I'm participating in, they have seen rapid growth in their Hispanic population. Teachers here have mentioned that they feel like they have a lack of training on how to work with English language learners, or some are new teachers who feel like they've had a lack of experience with English language learners. When speaking with the administration at this school, they've also noticed a need for teacher training on WIDA and access use. In my literature review of BAT, she identifies that when given the opportunity to rank the top 6 needs, the following as needs of our educators: parent involvement, ESL curriculum development, first and second language literacy development, SIOP protocols, ESL methods, and how to have a newcomer center. We have to give teachers strong, consistent support in the best strategies and methods to reach, inspire, and teach English language learner students. In Greenfield's study on teacher perceptions towards English language learners, she found that teacher attitudes have a direct effect on student motivation, self-esteem, and educational outcomes. Greenfield's research stated that scholars trust that the following variables predict positive attitudes about English language learners: the coursework and multicultural education or second language learning, working directly with English language learners, personal experience abroad, specific training to teach English language learners, completion of a graduate degree, and living in a geographic region where legislature supports English language learners. In the school that I'm participating in, teachers mentioned that they had no experience abroad, varying degrees of working with English language learners, and minimal specific training for English language learners. According to O'Neill, Ringler, and Rodriguez, when delivering professional development workshops on the SIOP model, the response from teachers is that this model does not take away from their instruction, does not add to their instruction, but improves their instruction and the student's comprehension. It is therefore a recommendation to include the SIOP model as part of ongoing professional development for in-service teachers. I also feel that professional development using WIDA and access training could benefit teachers in this school. The methodology for this project is as follows. For this study, I have collected data using a mixed methods approach to understand the relationship between teacher attitudes and lesson plan modification before and after WIDA access training. For this study, I will focus on 10 elementary teachers that have ESL students. The purpose of this project will be to investigate the effects of teacher training on WIDA access testing on their attitudes towards their English as a second language population, and then how it affects their lesson plan modifications. The setting for this research study will be at an elementary school located in a rapidly growing rural community. The school is ranked as distinguished and does not qualify for Title I funds. This school has a little over 600 students that are predominantly Caucasian or Hispanic. For the purpose of this study, it was necessary that the participants have ESL students. The participants in this study are 10 female Caucasian elementary teachers. They range in ages from 26 to 50. The teachers in this study have varying amounts of teaching experience. One participant is in her K-tip year or her first year of teaching, and one participant has taught for 20 years. The remainder of the participants have taught for 3 to 17 years. All of the participating teachers have a bachelor's degree in elementary education. 2 have a master's degree in special education, and 3 have a master's degree in literacy. 4 of the participants have started a master's degree program, but have not completed it. The teachers participating in this study have ESL students and have expressed an interest in learning more about WIDA access testing. I will start this action research project by obtaining signed consent from each of the 10 participants. I will then conduct teacher interviews to gain insight into teacher perception regarding their English language learners within the first week of this research study. I will then gather quantitative data using a rubric to score teacher-made lesson plans and their English as a second language modifications prior to and after the WIDA Access training. I'll provide WIDA Access training in the form of a 1-hour professional development session using videos, hands-on activities, and handouts for the study participants. After the WIDA Access training, I'll administer another survey to the participants to find out if their attitudes towards their English as a second language population have changed since the training. After the training, I will also ask the participants to modify their lesson plans according to the WIDA Access guidelines. I will then score the lesson plans again, looking for modifications for English as a second language students on the same rubric to gather data on the effectiveness of the training. I will be using a mixed methods data analysis for my qualitative and quantitative data from this action research study. This will include 2 different forms of data analysis: qualitative data from the teacher interviews and quantitative data from the lesson plan rubric. According to Mertler, they state that in mixed methods triangulation design, the 2 types of data will weigh equally since both analyses are conducted at the same time and the results are interpreted simultaneously. In the initial interview for question number 1, how do you feel about your current instruction for your ESL students? I received responses such as, it can be a struggle. I don't think I do a very good job of modifying assessments or assignments for ESL students. I feel like I do an adequate job for instruction with ESL students. I think I need to improve on my instruction for my ESL students. So overall, a lot of the responses that I received, there was a common theme of, I don't feel like I am doing my best and I need help. The second question posed was, how do you feel about ESL lesson plan modification? Some of the responses that I received had to do with educators feeling like they had no problem adjusting work or teaching different strategies for ESL learning. However, they didn't always write the modifications down. Some educators said they did not currently modify lesson plans for ESL students. A common theme that I saw amongst all 10 were that lesson plan writing were not commonly something that was done, that they would jot down the big idea for the lesson, but not a full lesson plan. In initial interviews on how would you rate your ESL lesson planning abilities, most participants rated themselves average. They said that they do what they can, but they don't feel very knowledgeable about it. One participant said they would not give themselves a high rating, that they know what skills those students need to work on, but they do not include that in their lesson every day. In initial interviews, when asking about familiarity with WIDA and access testing, most participants said they were not familiar with WIDA access. Some said that they had not seen the test at all, and they've never been present when the kids are taking the test. And then 2 participants took the CRIOP program provided by Georgetown College and attended a day-long PD on WIDA access testing by Dr. Brody. When asking how familiar the participants were with WIDA access scores, I received such responses as, "I'm somewhat familiar with the results. However, I'm not sure that I completely understand the results. I receive the scores, but often feel like there's an inconsistency between what the students can do in the classroom compared to the access test. Often students test out of the program in my grade, but I feel they're not ready to lose support services. It can be frustrating. I'd like to know more about why that is and what tasks they actually have to do to receive the scores that they get." The overall common theme with using WIDA access data for lesson plan modifications amongst the participants were they were not very familiar with how to do that. One participant stated in their experience, "It's usually simplified language or extended time, which I would use to accommodate any student in second grade." The second portion of my research study is using quantitative data to score the lesson plan modifications prior to WIDA access training. So on my rubric, I was looking for, did the participants' initial lesson plan have a modification? Did it use WIDA framework when designing the modification? And what was the effectiveness of this modification? All 10 participants did not have any ESL modifications in the initial lesson plan. Participants participated in a WIDA access training that took about 40 minutes. We started the training with a video produced by Kelsey Davis to learn a little more about what WIDA and access are. Then we watched a video, also produced by Kelsey Davis, on what you can do with the WIDA can-do descriptors. We then proceeded to get out some WIDA access books and materials to look through them. I had the ESL teacher at the school bring in some non-identifying WIDA access scores for participants' students' grade levels. So since there were some kindergarten teachers, we had kindergarten scores. Since there were second grade teachers, we had some second grade scores, and so on. We then used the WIDA access books and the WIDA access scores and some generic lesson plans that I had printed off to try to modify those lesson plans. For the post-interview results, question 1, how do you feel about your current instruction for your ESL students? Most of the participants responded that they felt more comfortable with instruction for their ESL students. For question 2, on how do you feel about ESL lesson plan modifications, there was not much of a change. Responses varied. I think this had to do with the lack of formal lesson planning on their part. For question number 3, on how would you rate your ESL lesson planning abilities, there were themes of improvement. They were capable, but still not making formal lesson plans. For post-interview results for questions 4, 5, and 6, there were drastic themes of improvement and better understanding. For question number 4, with how familiar you are with WIDA access testing, the teachers all said they felt more familiar and had a better understanding. For question number 5, how familiar are you with the WIDA access scores? They felt much more comfortable. They also expressed for question number 6, with how familiar are you with using WIDA access data for lesson planning modifications, that they were able to explain and identify the purposes and use for modifying using WIDA access scores. Post results for the lesson plan modifications for my quantitative data showed large gains of growth. Since initial lesson plannings, all 10 had 0 modifications for ESL students. When looking at modifications that were made after the WIDA access training, all participants had a modification for their English language learners. When looking at their use for their WIDA framework when designing this lesson plan, most participants scored a 1, 2, or a 3. none of the participants did not refer to WIDA completely. And then the last part of my rubric that I was looking for was the effectiveness of this modification. And most of the lesson plans were moderately effective or very effective for their ESL students. As with any research study, there were many limitations to this project. After initial planning and deciding to ask the participants to hand in a lesson plan to check for modifications, I realized I should have asked for a lesson plan that did contain a modification. All lesson plans that were handed in had 0 modifications, showed major growth in the final product. I also feel like the amount of participation was limiting in this project. Initially, it took quite a few weeks to get all 10 participants and to get 10 participants that wanted to continue throughout the process. Time is another limitation of this project. If I'd had more time, I probably could have gotten better quality from the interview portion of this project. So what's next? What can this data be used to do, and how can it benefit this school? After participating in this research study, I've seen that there's an expressed interest in more training for WIDA and Access scores. There's a desire to learn about student cultures and their home lives, and participants want quick ways to jot down modifications without formal typed lesson plans. They've also expressed an interest in getting training for other staff